missionaries arriving got here, when they came here to the islands, this was their first stop before going someplace else. Significance of the buildings themselves. Okay, these are 3 original buildings. They all date from between 1821 and 1841. Okay. That house in the back part, okay, is the oldest still standing wood frame structure in all of the islands. It's 189 years old. It was finished at the end of 1821. So that, in terms of architecture, that's why this place is significant. And of course, the missionaries are very important to Hawaiian history, precipitating many of the changes that occurred during that time period. Christianity. The interesting point to make about that, of course, you know about the end of the kapu system, right? That occurred 6 months before the missionaries got here. The missionaries were somewhere along the eastern seaboard of the Caribbean when that happened here. So it's sort of an interesting point to make, is that the polytheistic religion would more or less come to an end before the missionaries even got here. Another interesting change that came with the missionaries was written language. The missionaries were the first to reduce Hawaiian to a standardized written form. Absolutely, the missionaries had a lot of visitors. Queen Ta'akumanu herself stayed inside the frame house. Matter of fact, she has the guest room here. She referred to it as her apartment, which is how often gives you an idea of how often she stayed in. They also took in orphans and students that they housed and sheltered and put through the mission schools. There are Hawaiians all over the houses, all the time. They did keep an area that they called the kapu yard, which was generally for their kids, that most native Hawaiians were not allowed into. Now, there were many Hawaiians. The missionaries had hired help that they did pay. That was for printing books, mostly. Broadsides, flyers, all sorts of books, Bibles, hymnals, school books. You had to do basically one page at a time. One side of one page at a time. Well, interestingly enough, the wooden house was shipped here from New England. All the lumber for it was cut in New England and then shipped here for them to assemble. Now, the kahale pa'i, the print shop where the printing press was, in this building over here, the Chamberlain House. The coral was mined from the living reefs out in the harbor in Waikiki. They cut by hand, by divers, with stone and iron tip tools out of the living reef. Because they hauled supplies into the house from those doorways. There's a beam at the top with a ring. That was used as a pulley. And then they'd store mission supplies on the second and third floor. The first floor was for the Chamberlain family, which eventually grew to 2 adults and 8 kids. Basement. Not very common here in Hawaii by any stretch, but of course these are not Hawaiian-style homes. Mm-hmm. They're New England-style homes. And most New England homes have a basement. Well, it partially depended if you were a mission woman or a mission man, and what you were doing with the mission, whether you came out here as a teacher or a farmer, or a trained reverend. Well, in terms of the overall mission, okay, 178 people came, about 70 odd families. Came here distinctly as missionaries. And they're spread out over 17 stations on 5 islands. Most of the time, in terms of the mission families, most mission stations had 2, maybe 3 families, mission families. staying at that particular station. But there was a lot of shuffling around. Just because you started off your career, say, stationed in Lahaina, right? That doesn't mean you stayed there, okay, necessarily. You get shifted to other mission stations. A lot of times, because people would take leave of the mission, or they'd have to travel around the district and needed to fill in at the home church, so to speak. So the missionaries moved around a lot. I think that's kind of important to me. But over the course of the 43 years of the mission, about half of the families went home, and about half of them stayed here in the islands permanently.